and get ready for 1 hour of learning, and get ready to accommodate as many nuggets of wisdom as you can in this session. So hello everyone, and welcome to this session of Chat and Learn in association with Enlastro. In this session, we'll cover a bit about how to break into tech with an unconventional background with Sanath Shetty. So just hold your horses a little bit. We'll introduce our amazing speaker in just a moment. And before we do that, I'll take you through a couple of basic housekeeping rules. I know we've been living in this COVID bubble and the post-pandemic era for quite a long time. So everybody is kind of aware nowadays about what it is, but let me go through it nonetheless. So participate. We aim it to be an interactive session, and we wish to foster interactivity as much as we can. So turn on your cameras and come off mute if you can. And this session is also being recorded. So if you want to consume this information afterwards, you will get the recording. We urge everyone to write in the chat, and if you value anonymity a bit, you can also DM me privately if you want your question and your name to remain anonymous. And did it even happen if it wasn't on social media? So make sure to tag us at the rate Powered of Life on LinkedIn, Twitter, and all social media is available. So we are everywhere. So tag us and let us know what you thought about this session. So with that being said, we will go towards introducing our amazing speaker. So Sanath is a BITS Pilani graduate with over 8 years of experience in building enterprise-grade applications focused on scale. He graduated with an electronics and electrical degree, but his inclination from the start had always been towards building products. So that justifies the name, breaking into tech with the unconventional background. So you can see the unconventional background here, from electrical degree to making a career in computer science. So this made him move towards becoming a web developer and upgrading to a solutions architect role, and eventually leading a team of 30 engineers playing with various roles. So currently he's working with Brij. So welcome, Sanath. We are so glad to have you with us here. I know we covered a little bit about you, but I'll hand over the floor to you to tell us a bit more about yourself and your venture, Brij. So take us through.
Sure. Thank you so much for the lovely words. So basically, like, just to give you a kind of background of where I come from, I started off as an engineering background in electronics and electrical engineering. But because of my inclination when it came to product, that's when I moved my focus towards software and development as a whole. And obviously, when it comes to product right now, because of the whole era of cloud, my focus kind of shifted towards cloud and web as a whole, because that's where you can kind of reach scale a lot more efficiently and quickly, basically. So in general, like my focus currently has been multiple products that I've been working on over the life cycle of my career. And currently, my focus is Brij, which is a cloud-based ticketing solution designed for cinema chains to manage all their ticketing requirements on the cloud, basically. So the product is something that is used by multiple cinema chains in the Middle East focused, where like basically like it's like a PVR of the Middle East basically uses what I have built, basically. And there's a team of 35 people behind the product, obviously, with me playing the role of a solutions architect.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So, Sanath, you want to take us through, the presentation that you have for us?
Sure. So, just give me a second. I'll just start sharing my screen.
Absolutely.
Is it visible?
Yeah. Yes, it's visible.
I'll just turn to presentation. So starting off from like what like the purpose of this conversation and why the session was set up, right, is basically to identify like the promising roles in tech jobs, because one of my core focuses also comes in the whole hiring space, where a large part of my role includes not just software development but also team building, right? And I kind personally been agnostic to the background the person comes from, mainly because I don't come from a computer science background, right? And basically being from BITS, we had the flexibility of picking our careers there, where you could pick any course you want, but that still doesn't mean that you can do everything that is available in computer science. And that kind of forces you to kind of become a lot more of a self-starter and self-learner to getting to where you want to be in your career, right? And obviously, like starting my own thing, building a startup kind of has its own good and bad. The good being that you get to learn a lot of different things that you can do as a whole from a path perspective, and obviously covering a lot more ground in terms of the learning opportunities available, right? So now when it comes to my role specifically in Brij, which is the product I'm currently focused on, it starts off from building a product roadmap. So I have to kind of make sure that whatever we are building is focused on a long-term goal of the product, covering the short-term requirements of clients and long-term requirements of the product as a whole from a growth perspective. So say from a design perspective, you would have like say a cinema with 20 locations and 8 million users. You have to also consider the scale of 100 million users coming to your application, basically that you're building, right? Second would be the planning of the technology stack as a whole. So coding is the last thing that kind of comes into focus when it comes to a technology role. The first part is deciding what to build, and second is how do you get there. So because of the number of opportunities and different technology stacks available currently, which is a very, very crowded space in terms of multiple technologies available like Node, Ruby on Rails, PHP, Laravel, multiple frameworks available. And that kind of puts a lot of pressure into deciding initially what you have to make sure that you do it right in the first go. For example, like Facebook was designed on PHP, and because of it being on PHP, it faced its own set of limitations when it comes to the kind of scale they can reach. And that kind of, because obviously you cannot rewrite everything, you are kind of forced, they build their own compiler to make the process more efficient. So deciding the technology stack becomes super, super critical in the get going. The third would be obviously setting up a team, because you cannot be like a one-man army when it comes to software development. You have different people focused on different tasks and different parts of the system, right? So a product will be made up of multiple pieces like the database, the API, the front end, the UI, the design phase. And all of these come together because of multiple people and stakeholders being part of the process, basically. So having and building a team that is strong enough to support it with the same vision and goal for the product is super, super important. It's not only about their ability to build, but their ability to like grow with the product and understand and comprehend what is required. Because of being in say a startup and a product phase, the most important piece to the puzzle is iterative design. And so you have to kind of design it in such a way that you can iterate a lot more quickly as and when the market evolves, so that you don't become redundant in the market and someone else isn't come in your space, basically. Last would be obviously designing the solution for specific use cases, which is focused right now on ticketing, right? So now there's a general use case of events, ticket, movies, and obviously like can branch out to multiple arena kind of formatting also. So you have to define your specific use case from a product perspective and focus on that to solve the problem, basically. And lastly would be obviously provide technology solutions to operational problems. So finally, tech is an enabler in large number of use cases. So you have to kind of focus on making sure whatever you build is solving a specific problem, and is the problem large enough, obviously, right? Like something as simple as importing the data, it can manually be done. It can be done using scripting, right? But the choice is the problem large enough to focus on it, and then focusing on solving the same, basically, because there will be multiple battles you'll have to fight from a product perspective. And so deciding which one to pick first because of limited resources, right, is very, very, very important. Like one of my friends who works in Facebook had mentioned that the number of bugs in the Android application of Facebook, there are over 10,000 bug fix requirements, basically. So the question is, what do you pick first versus just trying to solve everything, basically? Like when it comes to product, right? Why product and what's the value of product, right? The reason, like the question arises on why is tech that valuable, right? And I've heard this very often in the past where um a lot of people have told that it's a bubble, right? And that is going to burst. And obviously, you must have seen companies firing because of not being able to scale. But the most important piece when it comes to the question why it is so valuable is visible on the slide, where Kodak in the year 2012 had 13,000 employees and their valuation was at 1 billion, while Instagram is was at 13 employees and its valuation also was at 1 billion. So you kind of see the difference between a technology-driven startup and a product versus operational heavy, people-driven company. So the scalability that is possible from a technology perspective is a lot more higher, and that's where the value comes in, basically. So at the end of the day, the pay is based on the value you can offer, and that's what tech offers is a lot more value in general. Another example would be something like Joe Rogan. He has a podcast, he has an online video YouTube channel, and so he does 200 million views a month currently. And CNN, which has 3,000 employees, has 330 million views per month. So the whole idea behind something like a YouTube, why is it so valuable, is because of something like this, where a single person like Joe Rogan can reach 200 million views, almost equivalent to something like a channel like CNN, which has been, say, a non-tech company, basically. So, coming down to like the challenges of pursuing a tech career. So now the larger issue that I've seen over here when it comes to joining a tech career largely lies around the chicken and egg problem, basically, which comes first, right? Largely because of the fact that the expectation in general has always been about experience, where the expectation is always everyone is looking for someone with a lot of experience. Right. And the bucket of people with experience is very limited, leading to the higher demand and lower supply of people. So the first biggest problem is if you're not from a technology background, then you will by default have no experience. And that leads to a problem where you cannot apply to a lot of jobs and roles because there are very limited entry level roles in tech unless you say get in through like a college placements otherwise. But usually the entry level roles comparatively are very limited. Again, I'm talking about focused on product and technology driven startups. You have a lot of entry level roles in service based startups like say a TCS, but in a technology startup, the expectation is usually large amount of experience. And now the question is, how do you get that experience? Is by getting a job. But to get a job, you need experience, right? There's also a certain level of understanding of how the landscape is in tech, where like there is a lot of things that have to come together to build a product. What we see as the end output is just the final thing, but there are 100 different things that come together finally to get to the output that is what you see. Right. So it's very important that when you kind of doing a background and understanding and learning this whole process, you need to kind of focus on your whole end-to-end understanding. And because if you know how to write a language, that is not enough anymore. If you know how to set up a server, that is not enough. You need to know like the end-to-end process of development and deployment and actually working on something live, basically. The There's a very low learning entry barrier in general because there are a plethora of courses online available for when you talk about learning something, right? Because you got YouTube, you got an academy, Udemy, you got so many different sources for you to learn software development as a whole, and that's why the entry barrier is really low at the same time. But therefore the entry barrier for a high-end job is very high. So the learning requirement is very low because you have a lot of content available for free for that matter. And that's why the entry barrier for learning is low. But for getting a job, the entry barrier tends to be quite high because the expectation and the requirement for a product is can be really, really complex. And so that's where experience plays a major role in taking that decision of hiring someone, basically. So talking about how do you get there, like the most important part to how do you solve these problems related to getting a job in the first place, right? The first most important thing is internships. Uh, like the goal is to at least try and if you're not able to get a job because of XYZ reasons, the focus always should be to work on getting internships because over there the entry barrier is reduced substantially because of the fact that the expectation is much lower. Obviously, the apply for internships that can convert to a job, but at the end of the day, internships help you kind of improve your experience and make sure that when it comes to a job, you will be a lot more well equipped. In terms of what internships to do itself, there is a lot that can be done over there where the focus is to get into software internships, not something into data entry or something, but focus is software basically. Second would be vetting of job openings. So, like you should not blindly apply for different jobs with the hope that something works out, but vet the jobs a lot more and understand what is your forte. So the goal is to have some level of your own input and learning, which kind of gives you a foot in the door when it comes to applying for, say, an internship or a job. Where if you have some level of your own experience, even if it may be a personal project, that actually helps a lot in applying for a role at any different companies out there, basically because there will be a lot of smaller companies that are looking for interns and job openings which will be available, which may not have that high an entry barrier. And so by vetting jobs and focusing on jobs that have requirements of what you have experience in, even if it may be personal experience or learning in terms of certification course, that will kind of help you get there a lot more quickly. The third would be building your own portfolio of projects to showcase your skills. So at the end of the day, because of the fact that there is the best way of validating someone's experience is to show something, right? And so even if you do not have like a job experience, having your own portfolio projects up and running and to available to show to people, that itself will help you kind of get your foot into the door into multiple interviews in general. And obviously that from there on, it comes to your skill set when it comes to actually interviewing. And that is where your focus shifts from like your core skills to your soft skills also, which plays a major, major role. The fourth would be again like the way to pick the project. Like now the question arises on how do I decide on which project to go ahead with, right? And in that case, having to decide on a project can be anything from something as simple as a COVID vaccine tracker, because everything has APIs, right? So there are a lot of simple open source projects available that you can contribute to. So that itself can play a major role in helping you decide on what to build. And at the same time, finding a problem that you face yourself, right? And then building something to solve that specific problem, right? So something as simple as like in the past where I was playing around with crypto, I made like, and this was quite some time back, like 5, 6 years back when the market was not that evolved and there were not many solutions out there. I built for myself like an alert management system to keep track of the price of, say, Bitcoin. And it'll automatically alert me when it reaches a particular level. So now you have a lot of products that help you do that. But at the time when I was looking into this, this was a problem that I faced. So it was a quick thing for me to build at that point of time, but that itself gave me a lot of experience when it came to third-party APIs and third-party real-time APIs that may change very quickly over time, basically. The fifth thing that comes to mind is also where. Now, the question is, where do you look for internships and job openings? So the easiest way is looking at internship portals like Internshala. You have many web portals like Indeed, Hirec, each of them having their pros and cons. But at the end of the day, it all depends on where you apply, number one, and your focus in terms of the kind of role. So if you are a person who just learned say HTML, CSS, focus on applying on front end roles. Do not apply for a back end role because that will just lead to more rejection as a whole. So kind of select your forte. And then the last thing is apply, where you may not be able to crack as many roles initially. And so practicing for interviews itself will give you an idea of what to expect in an interview in terms of what is the expectation of your level, your ability in the first place. And that itself, the practice is what is going to help you crack the next job. So initially you will face a lot of rejection as a whole, but once you get like you crack the first role that you have, from there it gets a lot more easier because that experience then adds up with time very quickly. And the initial experience has an exponential addition to your final output because once you get your foot into the door and you can actually contribute to projects, then there's a lot of value add you can do long term for other companies, right? So once you have a 2 year experience, from there on you can end up being a lot more picky because you'll have a lot more offers in hand before you can actually switch roles. In terms of like which role to look for, there are like a plethora of roles here too, all the way from being a full stack developer, a UI engineer, a UI developer, a designer, a data scientist, a business analyst. All of these roles all come down to tech. So tech itself has like over 100 different roles that you guys can apply for. But the question is again, the chicken and egg problem plays a major role here. So ideally, have some level of experience in it, or through another job, or at least have some projects to showcase your skill set to actually be eligible for a job that you do not have a professional experience in. So in terms of where you are and where can you go as a whole, right? So you have like two tracks usually when it comes to selecting where you want to be and where you want to go. There is the technical track, which is focused on your expertise in designing a solution and focused on obviously your technical skill of software development as a whole. So can you code? Can you architect? Those come into the picture when it comes to the technical track. While when it comes to the managerial track, you're focused more on people management as a whole. So designing your organization and making sure everyone is like the whole organization is well structured. So you obviously start off as like usually Amazon has the SD1, SD2, SD3. So software development engineer 1, 2, 3 is the first 3 roles initially. Then you have staff engineer 1, 2, 3 again. So each of these roles, depending on the size of the organization, will have its own level of tiers within them, basically. So it's important like that to understand where do you want to be. Are you more of a people's person? The managerial track kind of helps a lot. While if you focus more on engineering focused thought process, then the technical track will help a lot. Now, in general, like if you're talking about just the technical track, there is a lot you can do within the technical track itself. So now, how do you decide which track to go with? And within the each, like 'cause the management and technical is a very high level bifurcation. And so now coming to the low level bifurcation on how do you decide which one is more appropriate for you? So the first thing comes, the question is, are you interested in technology as a whole? All right, what is your focus when it comes to technology? Is it like, do you like interfaces? Which is like, say, the website on how it looks, or do you like the idea of building something like that in terms of how does it run in the background to support what you see, right? So it's very important to understand from a technology perspective of what you are looking for within technology itself. The second track is data, right? If you want to be a data scientist, a data engineer, there's a lot to do with data when it comes to scale. So as soon as the scale goes up, the data sizes go up, and that's when the data becomes hard to manage, number one, and also second is very, very, very valuable at the same time. And that's why Facebook, Amazon, and all are what they are is because of the data they collect. So initially, the data will just be stored separately, but as soon as the data size increases, its value also shoots up substantially. The third would be, are you interested in infrastructure? So when I talk about infrastructure, I'm talking about servers, I'm talking about cloud. The whole cloud relies on having infrastructure. So there's the hardware infrastructure, there's software infrastructure, each one of them having their pros and cons, and a lot of specialization in specifically each one of those. Then the fourth would be people. Are you a people's person? Do you think managing people is something that you would be interested in or you would like? And that itself, like if you like interacting with people, you end up going more of a coordination role in tech, because that is a very, very critical role, which is say a project manager or a product manager. So say project manager is a role focused on uh, managing delivery of certain requirements that may come for a particular product, right? While you have a product, and this can scale across teams, because you'll have a design team, you'll have a UI team, you'll have a backend team, you'll have a data team, you'll have a database team. So as a project manager, your role scales across multiple teams to make sure that all of it is managed by a single person, the single source of truth in terms of what needs to be done, right? The second is a product manager role, which is very similar to a project manager, but the large difference between a product and a project manager lies around the fact that a product manager is also taking decisions on what to do. So if you have a product and you are not sure of what to build next, that is the role of a product manager to decide what to build next for the end consumer, basically. Next comes the AI role. So there are a lot of roles in AI itself. So artificial intelligence comes under the domain of machine learning also, and data processing. So inside AI, there are multiple layers to it, from data wrangling to data processing to actually running algorithms and building algorithms for that matter. So all of this comes under AI. And now the question is, are you interested in it? But and the last thing would comes to product. So if you are very, very product focused, you like seeing, building things, questioning design ideas around something like a Zomato, where when it comes to one of my pet peeves, it is bad design. So one of my things that I end up always getting frustrated is when I use like an app like a Zomato and Swiggy and start comparing them because of certain very specific use cases that some of them solve and some of them don't. So that's the reason I personally prefer checking out, and I like the whole role of being a product manager as a whole. Like technically from my standpoint, I kind of range from the technology, data, infrastructure, people, and product. So now the question is, how do you decide that? Assuming you don't have any experience in any one of these things. Just a second. Huh? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Okay, great. So now the most important piece over here when it comes to deciding your interest is, how do you decide that interest, right? And the easiest way to decide that interest is actually getting your hands dirty with actually doing something within each of these domains. And until you come across something that you seem to be good at, you have a knack for, and you actually like working on. So now when it comes to technology, you can literally build a website yourself. So now when you build a website, you can, again, you have enough of content available online for doing that. So you build a website, and if you like the side of building the UI, the creating the database, storing the data, then hosting it or keep it taking it online comes under infrastructure. And lastly is like whenever it comes to people's role. Someone raised their hand. Any questions?
We'll take the questions in the end. So
Towards the
let's
end. Yeah,
continue with it.
sure.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. So just a second. Let's close this. Yeah. So coming to what interests you, you have to kind of start getting your hands dirty in each and every one of these domains till you come across something that you really, really like. Usually the entry level for getting into coding is usually the lowest because of the fact that there's a lot of content available and it's less subjective but objective when it comes to the delivery and whether you'll be able to do what you need to. So that's why the first three are the easiest to kind of get a foot in the door. But when it comes to people, when it comes to product, AI also, there's a lot of content available where you can showcase your ability to run algorithms, build your own machine learning algorithm is possible by yourself independently. But when it comes to people and product, that's something usually happens as and when you step up the ladder, where once you are good at technology as a whole, it helps you understand the decision making process too, basically. So now when it comes to planning your roadmap, first step is pick the technology you want to work on. That right now is not super important. Go for the easiest one that you feel is the easiest, mainly because of the fact that the most important thing when it comes to being in tech is your ability to evolve really quickly. So usually in most use cases, I'll be given like a project in a language that I have never worked on, but I'm giving like a 2-day head start to say that, okay, learn it enough so that you can start working on it, right? So the first step is picking the technology you want to work on. If I had to pick something, it would be like on the realm of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node, React, Vue.js. You have also other options like backend. You have Ruby on Rails, you have Java. So picking the technology which is important to start with, to pick exactly what you want to focus on for the purpose of your learning roadmap, not your long-term career, but your learning roadmap. Then the next step is learn a language that and its syntax to make sure that you actually can convert whatever you're thinking into something instructions for the computer, because having a good hold over a language is literally the ability to communicate with a computer. And so if you have a good hold over a language like JavaScript, that means that you can build whatever you want within the realm of JavaScript. Right. So having a good hold over a language is super important. And that kind of will grow in the process. So obviously you don't need to spend like years just learning a language before you can start a project. Spend like a 15-day, 30-day plan. You're doing a course focused on understanding the language and its syntax and its nuances. Once you're there, you can pick a project, right? So the project depends on what you're interested in. There are a lot of different projects available, starting from the simplest being a building like a calculator app to more complex like building a whole social media platform. So there's a whole range of projects, and depending on your ability to code, you can start from the easiest and then slowly move to more complex projects as a whole. The fourth would be focusing on generalization of the problem, where the more general problems you're able to solve, the better it is. Because there are the same issues that many different you can say domains of technology face, like scaling up itself is a general problem with multiple solutions to it. So understanding and generalizing the problem is super important. And next comes tutorials. Like when you're starting off, tutorials are your best friend. Like right now, after a point, you move on to reading documentation, which is available for every different technology that is released, right? And some have good, some have bad documentation. But have following tutorials, usually video tutorials, is a good way to start off, because that will give you a lot more direction and insight, so that there's a lesser chance of errors basically while writing code. Um, the final thing would be focusing on live coding. So the more you write code, the better you will be at it. So there is something called tutorial hell, where people end up spending a lot of time just doing tutorials, but they can never work on an actual project because of the fact that they only know it's like blinds to the student, where their focus has been just to learn on the tutorials that they're taught and not being able to do anything else but what the tutorials have taught, basically. So in terms of alternate paths, you have multiple places you can go once you are good at what you do, right? So are you looking at something that's more people focused, more team building, more independent roles? So depending on that, you can kind of move across the domain over here. So you have one place which is like, say, R&D, which is focused on you independently working. Some roles that are more critical roles, like say a database admin, so because you have to maintain uptime of production applications. While if you want something that's people focused and independent, becoming a freelancer with a particular set of skill sets helps you a lot, because that means that you can work independently when and where you want. But at the same time, you will have to interact with people to be better at what you do and getting work in general. So being a founder kind of is an important role because it's largely people focused, but it includes, depending on the kind of founder you are, like say, if you're the technical co-founder, you're also focused on the software side and not just the people dependent side, like sales and marketing, basically. If you are focused on more team building, project managers, product managers, scrum masters is an important role to play as a whole. So, yeah, I think this is something that, can you hear me?
Yeah. Perfect.
So this slide, I think, let's. Preksha, can you take this slide?
Yeah, it's just the certification courses that we offer actually, and what are the benefits attached along with the certification courses. You can move on to the next slide, Sanath.
Yeah. So I think we can go on to asking questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sanath, for this wonderful nuggets of wisdom that you shared with us. We have a couple of pre-submitted questions, and for all of our live participants, if you have any questions, this is the best time to pop them up in the chat, and we'll take them up and ask them to Sanath. So the first question that I have is basically from a senior person. Is it ever too late to pivot to tech? This person has over 20 years of experience in sales, and they'd love to get involved in the tech industry, but since they have a lot of experience under their belt, of course in a different domain, they cannot afford to start from scratch. So what would be your advice for a person like that?
So in this case, when you have a lot of experience, say in a different domain, but the vertical and not a domain for that matter is say sales, right? The most important thing to kind of take into consideration here is leveraging the existing skill set, right? So in this case, say you're a sales in a particular specific domain. So that means that you have a lot of experience in that specific domain, right? Because in general, when it comes to product and software, right, it is solving a problem in a specific domain, right? So your understanding of the domain will be a lot more better than someone with no experience. And so leveraging the fact that you have a lot of experience in a specific domain, if it may not be the tech side of things, that itself will play a major role in deciding where you go from there. So if say you are into HR, right, as simple as that, the way to pivot into HR, like a product HR company, is leveraging the fact that you understand a lot of processes when it comes to HR. So there will be a lot of companies building HR-based solutions, right? And that's where you can leverage your experience to actually join, like from a technology perspective, an HR-based solution product providing company, basically.
Sounds great. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. For somebody who is in the healthcare segment, moving on to some tech providers, who are creating tech-enabled solutions for that, you can be a great addition to their team. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much for that advice. And moving on, you mentioned a bit about, transcending your existing skill set into that technical interview. So can
Yeah.
you go a bit deeper into that statement and, tell us more about some advices on how somebody, who has an unconventional career experience, which is not computer science, how can they transcend their experiences into that interview table, which is predominantly tech based?
Mhm. So like ideally, right, you would not apply to entry level developer role in that case, right? Because you already have
Hmm.
an experience in something, right? But in this case, say something as simple as if you have sales experience, say in a real estate company, right?
Hmm.
So now your experience has always been around, say, managing a customer relationship management system, right? So a CRM would be something that you've used for 10 years, and so you understand, say, a CRM product really, really, really well, right? The in and
Hmm.
outs of it, the nuances of it, what are the good things, what are the bad things. And so that means that that itself makes you good as a product manager because you understand
Yeah.
product really, really well. Because it takes a
Yeah.
long time to get to a product manager role because of the fact that you don't understand the people using it and
Hmm.
the how to actually provide value. But now say you are a user of it and you have a lot more experience in that domain. So now say sales in a real estate company means you have a product which is say a Salesforce, right? So
Hmm.
you understand how Salesforce works in and out and what is good and bad about it, right? But now there'll be multiple competitors to Salesforce itself, and that
Hmm.
kind of will become where would be a good place to be or go to because you understand what the company is doing already much better than what they are doing themselves.
Yeah.
Because they'll always be coming from a technology background. So they don't understand the operational issues that building a product will have. Right.
Hmm.
And so it is important that having that background of the operational actual issues that will be there. Right. Like say a friend was buying a house recently and
Hmm.
what happened was that he had given a wrong phone number to them the first time he went to the flat to check it out. All right. So the entry in the system was with the wrong phone number. And when he actually wanted to purchase the flat, he couldn't because they were like, hey, your number is wrong. And so you will
Yeah.
get a call on that number. But because of how our system is designed, you cannot change that number. So kind of
Hmm.
like he had to delay his whole registration process because of the fact that their system is so rigid in its own
Yeah.
sense that he couldn't do anything about it. Right. So now someone who understands this process and who actually like, again, you need to have that mindset of thinking, how do you solve problems, right? That is the most critical process of thinking that you need to have in mind, and everything else kind of falls in place. So it's not about, hey, can I do a language? It's about, can I solve a problem? And the tool that you use is, say, a software language, basically. Right. So now a person who is a sales executive will understand the 100
Hmm.
different issues that these softwares face. And so there are a lot of product companies around this that will find value in what you have to provide.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really love that anecdote that you shared. Somebody who has an end-to-end knowledge of, what the customer journey looks like and what are the pain points of
Yeah.
the customer. They'll definitely be in a better shape to help the business, reach towards
Yeah.
its goals. All right. So
Yes.
moving on, we have another set of questions which are kind of based on a concept that you touched upon briefly during a presentation. Tutorial hell. How do I keep myself motivated to complete the courses? How do I uh, you know not go from certificate hopping to actually creating something? So what would be your
Mhm.
actionable tips on that?
So in terms of actionable tips, when it comes to avoiding tutorial hell, is specifically focused on uh, like try and focus on a single thing to learn, basically.
Mm.
Because a lot of people try and like you said, jump between certifications because it's like, hey, I learned
Yeah.
HTML, now I'll do CSS, now I'll do JavaScript, now I'll do backend, but not actually learning them, but understanding how a tutorial works. So the
Mm.
idea is as soon as you finish off with one segment, like one
Mm.
path, right? You start building projects on that path. And the goal being to finish these projects, right? And I think that is the most critical thing when it comes to software engineer is that push to solve and problems, basically, whatever the problem may be. Because if say you like usually 90% of the problems that you'll face on a day-to-day basis as a software engineer is something that you've not faced in the past. Right. And
Hmm.
that's what is the
Yeah,
value you're providing. Otherwise, you'd be a clerk. Right. So you're
true.
solving problems you've never done in the past. And that's the value you're providing. And in this case, like I still remember the first time, like 10 years back when I did file upload, I spent 5 hours on the same thing, right?
Hmm.
Just do file upload, which is a 2-minute job now. Right. So now the idea that to be at it, to just continue going at a problem to make sure you somehow or the other solve it, right, without knowing the end outcome, is something that is very, very important as a skill itself. That is an independent skill, so that then your problem solving ability itself will improve with time. So you'll be just quicker
True.
at finding the solution. And that's like the most critical value role that a software developer can have long term, basically.
Absolutely. Love that. So moving on, you talked a lot about there are some hard skills. I mean, if we basically categorize the entire technical landscape, there are basically whether you want to go with your skill on a group level, on a team level, or you want to be in an individual contributor role, be that R&D or which is not very people focused. So, what your suggestion to folks who are just starting their journey, or who are just in their first years, how to grow that social muscle or networking muscle, and how to get those social skills?
So when it comes to social skills, right? Number one is when like the most important thing when you're trying to say do a cold call or a cold email
Hmm.
to someone you don't know, right? And you want to socialize with someone who's like a co-founder or something like that. The most important thing is what is the value you're going to provide to the person. So focus on
Hmm.
that when you are kind of approaching someone, and not just like a hi, hello. Because if you have some
Hmm.
value to provide, you can kind of take the conversation ahead, basically. So if you don't provide value, there's no point to the whole thing, right? Then
Yeah.
why would someone respond to you in the first place? So when it comes to networking, obviously there are a lot of events that they can go for to network in, right? Like something as simple as college events as a whole. There's a lot of events that you can network in. But if you want like to network through cold calling, ideally, say LinkedIn itself is a good place. But the question is, what is the value you're going to add or provide to the next person, right? And
Yeah.
that's the reason having hard skills is super critical when you start early. Like say if you're in your doing your engineering or on your first, second, third year or something, having hard skills is so much more valuable initially, at least in your career, because of the fact that you can showcase it a lot more better, right? And
Yeah.
and when you have a hard skill and you can showcase it better, it's easier to analyze. You can get to where you want to a lot more quickly. And that's why internships will play a super critical role itself in that process. And how do you crack the internship is applying in multiple places. And again, the cold calling process. But when you're applying for it, always show value and what value will you provide. And then there can be an outcome to that process.
Absolutely. Make it a two-way process. And, it's not you just asking, but rather,
Yeah,
what you can add to them. Absolutely. Love that.
exactly.
Um, we have a question from Mary. So, what if you have some tech skills but are stronger as a people person? So, can you talk
Mhm,
more about the role of generalists and how they fit in this entire technical domain, roadmap or chart?
mhm. Okay. So now when it comes to generalist, the question is what kind of a generalist are you looking at? Because like HR itself is a major role in software companies because of the supply demand issue in the first place, right? So if you're a people's person, HR is not a bad place to be because HR is also really well paid in tech, mainly because of
Mhm.
the supply demand issue as a whole. So if HR is your thing and you're interested in it in tech, all you need to understand is analyzing candidates and their skills, and obviously learning from that, and so you can pick better candidates as a whole, right? So now if you're looking at other skill sets which are not hard skills, right, coordination roles are super critical as a whole because of the number of cogs and wheels that are all connected together in tech, right? So if you're a head of a particular vertical, say design is your thing. So you don't need to learn to code if you're a designer. So if you like UI UX, then that it's also a hard skill, but at the same time, not a coding hard skill, right? So if you like design, UI UX is a great place to go into because that itself has a lot of value to add in the design team. In art sector, a generalist, anyone who can be called to do any role. So the thing is that generalists are good as a whole, but it's very important to have one core skill because if you don't have the core skill, right, there's something that your value doesn't come out as much then, right? So
Yeah.
having a core skill is very important for sure, and then you can move to a generalist. So like you have that phrase, right? Like the jack of all trades and a master of none. But
Yeah.
many times the actual phrase being and many times better than the master of one, right? So it's important that if you can be a generalist, but having one core skill helps a lot to get a foot in the door because long term everyone becomes a generalist, right? Where I myself moved from being a front end UI to back end to full stack to team lead to solutions architect. So and obviously playing a role in hiring. So all of this kind of comes together to become a generalist. But having a core skill gives where you have value basically at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I completely agree with you that having a T-shaped skill graph where you know a lot of skills, but you kind of go down and you niche down on a particular skill that really makes you irreplaceable. So
Yes.
moving on, you touched upon a project that you made back in the day that could track the cryptocurrency prices. So
Yeah.
for somebody who wants to make a career in an unconventional field, which is currently a bit conventional now that we have a lot of press around the Web3 and the blockchain arena.
Yeah.
So how should that roadmap be for somebody who wants to make a career in blockchain? And tell us more about how you got interested about that area of computing.
So in general, right, I was always like a curious person, like things that I don't understand, I like to understand them, right? So I actually ended up doing mining of Bitcoin in like 2012 but I didn't understand its importance. Mined for 6 months, and then I was like, hey, this doesn't make sense because I had a few dollars worth of Bitcoin at that point of time. Now worth a lot more, but at that time it did not have value and it was like a few dollars over like 6 months, right?
Yeah,
But the thing was that I was very curious as a whole, right? So the few dollars is worth thousands right now, but the idea being that, and I lost it because it was on a hard drive basically, right? And there are a million stories like that on how people lost Bitcoin in the process, right?
yeah,
But the idea being that I was always very curious on how things work and what's the value to be provided. So that is actually what propagated me into this. Where if say if I want to do blockchain, right? The first step is understanding what do you want to do in it. First, understand what it is as a whole, how it works, and then what is it that you can add to it. So you have something like blockchain developers to build a blockchain from scratch, right? Like Ethereum, how Ethereum works is what people do right now, which is building blockchains, which is a very, very niche thing and very, very hard at the same time for someone who doesn't come from that background of years of experience, right? So you can always move to building things on top of existing also, right? Like it's like building a compiler. Right now, you would not sit and learn how to build a compiler because it's a lot of effort, right? So you go a little more high level where you kind of focus on building, say, something called smart contracts, right?
yeah,
But understanding it will help you, but you have to spend time understanding the whole ecosystem as a whole before you can jump and say that, okay, this is what I want to do, and within it, right? So there will be things like layers of things that form, like just like how a computer is made from silicon to microprocessor to assembly, ones and zeros to assembly language to machine code, right? And then the high level like C, C++, and then you have JavaScript, right? So each layer has a set of people working at that particular layer. So question is finding which layer that kind of works for you. So the higher you go, the usually it's easier, and as the when you go low level, it is harder. And same thing applies for something like a blockchain, basically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We have another question which basically touches upon, could you share some tips on how to land an interview when we don't have the experience required in the job description? And being in the leadership roles that you have, what do you look for in a candidate with a non-traditional background?
Mm-hmm. So like the thing is, because like I said, I do not look at a degree as a requirement because I learned that there are a lot of people who want to do this without a degree and can be really, really good. Where I've seen art students who have flourished in software development also. Right. So a degree and a certification is not a requirement for me. But what I do look for in a candidate if when I'm hiring is the ability to learn and grasp
Hmm.
information. That is super, super critical to have. And the second is their strength when it comes to communication, because of how complex things are. Communication becomes like 50% of the job. And 50%, like basically it's largely communication, planning, and actually coding. So coding is just 20% of the job at the end of the day. So the better you are at communication, the better you are at grasping information and your ability to learn at the end of the day. So that's why many of these tech companies that I've come across in the past have a requirement that they'll give you a thing like build this. Since you know JavaScript,
Hmm.
you build this. And if you're able to build, that means that you have an ability to grasp information. So even if they don't use the technology, it doesn't mean you are an idiot, right? It just means that
Hmm.
you've not studied it and you just need to study it and you'll be good at it, basically.
Hmm. Sounds good. So, all right, we're at the last stretch of this session. We have around 4 minutes left. So, if you have any questions, this is actually the best time to pop them in the chat. And we'll take another question before we call it an end. So, the question is the remote working sector is really hot right now. So,
Yeah.
where would you advise seeking remote opportunities in tech, earning in foreign currencies and making a lot more money because the remote opportunities are really lucrative being in country like India where the purchasing power parity difference makes the compensation a huge factor. So tell us more about that.
So when it comes to just a second. So when it comes to the whole remote work, right? It's important to understand that I personally don't recommend remote work as your first role that you do, mainly because having people around that have more knowledge than you is super, super, super important. And that is something that whenever you are building something, right, when you're working as a team, the whole workflow is completely different, right? So when you're independent, it is very, very different, and the learning process is also a lot more different than when you are working as a group, right? So I strongly recommend the first set of jobs that you do should be in person, because always never be the smartest person in the room, right? So when you have
Yeah,
people who have more knowledge than you learn a lot more efficiently and quickly. So it's important that you focus on getting a non-remote job to start with, and then moving to a remote job as in your skill set becomes a lot more evolved and flourished, right? That's when you can be a lot more picky and you make a lot more money if you're really good and remote at the same time. So remote
yeah,
means that you can end up getting jobs in Europe, US, that is actually not too hard with the kind of current ecosystem that exists, where basically they prefer paying you a $50,000 versus a guy in the US who makes $100,000, right? So
yeah,
because of how the ecosystem is and you have like an evolved experience, it is super easy to get a remote job once you have good experience. But I don't recommend remote as the first set of jobs that you do, because of the fact that showcasing your skills is hard, lesser learning as a whole, and that is what your focus should be in your first set of jobs.
thank you so much. All right, so that marks the end of the session. And for everybody tuned in, our partner Inlustro offers a lot of career-driven tracks in data science, full stack engineering. So check out their website. It is www.inlustro.co. And if you're somebody who's interested in pursuing their courses, please check out the link that we have dropped in the chat. So thank you so much, Sanath, for dropping these
Awesome.
nuggets of wisdom. We look forward to hosting in the future as well. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in.
All right.
All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank